What's going on, everybody? Earlier today on First Take, the discussion got heated around the Lakers and this whole narrative about saving cap space for the future. Now, for weeks, people have been pushing the idea that Los Angeles has its eyes locked on 2026, that the plan was always to clear the books, wait it out, and then strike big in free agency. But here's the thing, that story started to shift this morning. Jake Fisher came on and reported that, in reality, things have changed inside the Lakers front office. He used the word thawed, meaning that this idea of freezing their flexibility until 2026 just isn't the truth anymore. Trevor Lane, who's connected and plugged in, backed that up too. He said that from what he's been told directly, the rumors were overblown. So what does that mean? It means the Lakers are not sitting back and waiting. They are open for business right now. They are willing to explore trades, but not just any trade. They want opportunistic deals, ones that actually put them in position to compete for a championship this season alongside Luka Doncic and LeBron James. That's the priority. The goal is clear. Win now, not 2 or 3 years down the line. And that became one of the biggest talking points on the show. Because, yes, the Andrew Wiggins chatter continues to hover around Los Angeles. But as Stephen A. Smith pointed out, context matters. If you can land Wiggins without giving up a first-round pick, without gutting the rotation, maybe you do it. But when you start attaching Rui Hachimura, Dalton Knecht, a first-round pick, and then you're also forced to involve a third team just to make the money work, suddenly you're creating too many hurdles. You're plugging one hole while opening 3 others, and that's not how you build a contender in today's NBA. Look at Miami. They had to attach a second-round pick just to move off of Haywood Highsmith. That tells you how valuable even small expiring contracts are right now. And the panel emphasized that the Lakers can't afford to be reckless with the little flexibility they do have. Because the landscape around the league is shifting, teams like Miami are clearly preparing themselves for a reset, clearing the deck and thinking long-term. They're looking ahead at 2026 as a possible splash year, trying to position themselves to lure names like Austin Reeves, LeBron, or even James Harden, players they could throw money at when the timing lines up. But here's the catch. There just aren't star-level free agents available in the immediate future. That was another huge point everyone on First Take kept circling back to. If you look at next summer's market, you'll find plenty of solid role players, some valuable depth, but no one who truly replaces LeBron James. The best name out there is, in fact, LeBron himself. After that, you're talking about guys like James Harden, who simply doesn't fit what the Lakers are trying to build, or someone like Trae Young, whose style doesn't make sense next to Luka. Nobody available next year moves the needle for LA in the way they'd need. So if you're the Lakers, you are hoping, you are praying, that LeBron sticks around for at least another season. Because 2026? That always sounded far-fetched. And 2027, sure, it starts to make a little bit of sense if players like Giannis or Jokic actually hit free agency. But as Stephen A. reminded everyone, the chances of that happening are slim. More often than not, those kinds of superstars don't just walk in free agency. They either sign extensions to secure the money, or they request trades early so their new team has bird rights and can lock them in long-term. That's why the entire panel agreed. The talk about 2026 cap space was nonsense from the jump. It doesn't make financial sense once you consider extensions for Austin Reeves or even DeAndre Ayton if he pans out in Los Angeles. If you're paying Reeves around $30 to $35 million a year and Ayton another $20 million, that's already $50 million in your book. And that's not even factoring in if LeBron decides to stay. Add all of that up, and suddenly, the so-called big free agency splash window is gone before it even opened. So, what First Take really hammered home today was perspective. The Lakers can't waste the present chasing a future that might never materialize. Their focus has to be on maximizing the LeBron-Luka window while it's still alive. Now, let me take you back to how the conversation continued on First Take, because this is where things really got interesting. The panel started digging into the names that keep hovering around the Lakers: Giannis Antetokounmpo, Nikola Jokic, those once-in-a-generation guys who could actually tilt the balance of the league if they ever became available. And here's the reality that everyone on the table kept hammering. If there's even a whisper, even the slightest murmur, that Giannis is unhappy in Milwaukee or that Jokic might consider leaving Denver, those teams are not waiting for free agency to roll around. They are moving those players well before that, because no general manager is going to let an MVP-caliber star just walk for nothing. If it comes to that point, they're getting traded at the deadline, or the following offseason at the latest. And that's the catch for the Lakers. If you're dreaming about Giannis or Jokic simply strolling into Los Angeles as a free agent, forget it. The only path is through a trade, and that's where timing becomes everything. This season, as was pointed out, it doesn't make sense. The Lakers simply don't have the assets right now. But next season, that's where it becomes far more realistic. By then, Los Angeles could have as many as 3 first-round picks available. They'd have multiple pick swaps. They'd also have Austin Reeves, a player you could move in a sign-and-trade scenario. Plus, they'd have some level of cap space to absorb salary. That's a legitimate package, and it's the type of foundation you'd need if you're even going to get a team like Milwaukee or Denver to pick up the phone. But even then, the big question remains. Is that what those teams want? Would they value what the Lakers have to offer enough to move their superstar? That uncertainty is why the Lakers have to walk such a fine line right now. They need to make moves. They need to stay aggressive, but they can't back themselves into a corner. And Rob Pelinka himself addressed this exact dilemma. He echoed what Jake Fisher had reported, but he also made it clear that the organization's goal is simple: win a championship in the LeBron and Luka era. At the same time, he stressed the importance of maintaining flexibility. That's why, when asked about certain contracts they've given out recently, Pelinka was blunt. He said the Lakers don't want to get locked into players who might not be part of the long-term vision. And that's where the discussion turned to guys like DeAndre Ayton, Jake LaRavia, even the lower-tier deals that fill out the rotation. Pelinka's philosophy is that unless a player is a proven star, you don't tie yourself down with massive, long-term money. Ayton, for example, might be worth taking a 1+1 flyer on, but you don't want to be handing him a deal at $25 million a year over several years unless he absolutely proves it. The same goes for someone like LaRavia. If he works out, great, you keep him at a reasonable number. If he doesn't, you cut bait. And this is where Stephen A. jumped in with his classic fire. He called out Pelinka for being, in his words, too generous with player options. He compared it to Oprah handing out gifts. You get a player option. You get a player option. Everybody gets a player option. And the truth is, he's right, because those player options almost never work in the team's favor. If the player underperforms, he opts in, and you're stuck paying him for another year. If he overperforms, he opts out, and suddenly you're in a bidding war, or you lose him outright. Either way, the leverage usually goes against the team. Of course, there are exceptions. Stars like Luka Doncic, or even Ayton, depending on the circumstances, are worth that flexibility. But for vet minimum guys, for role players, that's where the panel agreed the Lakers have been too careless in recent years. You can't just hand out those options like candy, because they can end up strangling your roster down the road. So once again, we circled back to the central theme: flexibility versus urgency. The Lakers want to stay nimble, but they also can't afford to waste time in this window with LeBron and Luka. And that's why this whole preserve cap space for 2026 narrative feels so hollow. As Stephen A. put it bluntly, you're not getting Giannis or Jokic in free agency. If they move, they're going to be traded, and when they're traded, they're signing extensions with the new team. That's the reality, and the Lakers have to plan with that reality in mind, not some fantasy of free agency. And then, as the debate kept rolling on First Take, the conversation took a really fascinating turn. Somebody on the panel raised the idea that maybe, just maybe, the Lakers already know something the rest of us don't. Think about it. Luka Doncic's relationship with Nikola Jokic has been well documented. They're close. They talk. They've built a connection that extends beyond the court. Now, nobody on national television is going to come right out and say, "Oh yeah, The Lakers know Jokic is coming. That would be tampering, plain and simple. And that's not how this league operates on the record. But off the record, behind closed doors, that speculation is real. And if there's even a shred of truth to it, then all of this patience, all of this supposed cap space preservation suddenly looks like genius strategy instead of hesitation. But here's the thing. In the moment, it doesn't feel that way. In the moment, it looks risky. It looks like you're wasting opportunity. We've seen the Lakers play this game before, and it hasn't always worked out in their favor. Remember Kawhi Leonard? They waited, they hoped, they tried to maneuver around him, and in the end, they got burned. Dwight Howard? Same story. You gamble on patience, and sometimes that gamble turns into regret. So Stephen A. said it loud and clear. If the Lakers pass up on realistic chances to upgrade their roster today, trades that make sense, deals that bring in real help, because they're holding out hope for something down the line, he's going to lose his mind. Take Andrew Wiggins, for example. His name keeps coming up. If you can make that trade without gutting your assets, without selling the farm, you do it. Or what about someone like Herb Jones? If he becomes available at the deadline and the Lakers pass because they don't want his salary running past 2027, that's malpractice. You don't leave proven two-way wings on the table just because you're dreaming about a superstar years away. Because history tells us, more often than not, those superstars don't come. Now, to be fair, there's a flip side. The Lakers do have an edge in some of these scenarios. Expiring contracts are appreciating assets right now. Teams like Golden State may want to shed long-term money. The Clippers, too, might prioritize flexibility. That gives Rob Pelinka leverage if he stays patient. The longer he waits, the more pressure shifts to those other franchises to move players like Wiggins, and the less the Lakers have to pay. So, there's wisdom in restraint. There's strategy in letting the market come to you instead of sprinting to the door and overpaying out of desperation. And that's where Pelinka actually deserves credit. Say what you want about him, but the last couple of seasons, he's been disciplined. He didn't cave and give up everything for DeJounte Murray when the price was ridiculous. He held firm, and it opened the door for Luka. That same patience helped them land DeAndre Ayton. It's a balance. And Pelinka has shown he's capable of walking that tightrope when he has to. But here's where First Take left us, with the big question hanging in the air. Can the Lakers strike that balance again? Can they avoid passing up on the right opportunities today while still keeping themselves in position for the big swings tomorrow? Because the window with LeBron James is not infinite. Luka is spectacular, but you cannot waste seasons while waiting for the perfect move. So yes, patience has value. Yes, maybe the Lakers know more than we do, but the danger is real. You can't miss out on realistic, game-changing opportunities because you're chasing the dream of Giannis or Jokic. And that's why this debate isn't going away. The Lakers are walking the fine line between discipline and paralysis, and the entire NBA world is watching to see which side they fall on. So let's talk about what went down on First Take this morning, because this LeBron James narrative just refuses to slow down. Every time you think the conversation has finally run its course, it comes back with even more fuel. And today, it was Brian Windhorst stirring the pot once again. He said the Lakers don't really know what LeBron is going to do, that they don't know if he's going to retire after this season, and that uncertainty has been hovering over the franchise all summer long. Now listen, the panel wasn't buying into all that doom and gloom, at least not completely, because, let's be honest, all off-season we've been hearing the same noise. People speculating that LeBron is gone, that this is his last year in Los Angeles, that the Lakers themselves want to push him out the door. And when you hear it repeated enough, it starts to sound like there's smoke. But here's the truth, and this was made clear today. A lot of it is nonsense. A lot of it is just chatter with no real weight behind it. Stephen A. Smith said it best. If the Lakers really wanted LeBron out, don't you think they would have already made a move? If LeBron himself was desperate to leave, don't you think he would have walked away by now? The man has had multiple opportunities to leave Los Angeles. Remember last year, when reports surfaced about a potential trade to Golden State? The Lakers literally went to LeBron and asked him if he wanted. They were ready to do right by him, ready to make it happen if that was what he wanted. And what did LeBron say? He shut it down. He said no. That tells you everything. If he wanted out, he would have been out. That's the point J.J. Redick hammered home on the show today. This isn't a guy being forced to stay. This is a guy who chose to stay because he believes the situation in LA is still right for him. Now, the conversation naturally shifted to Anthony Davis. And this part got heated because we all know the narrative. LeBron was supposed to be handing the torch to AD by now. Anthony Davis was supposed to be the workhorse, the guy who could carry the heavy load so that LeBron, at this point in his career, didn't have to do it every single night. And let's be fair, there were stretches where AD looked exactly like that guy. There were games, there were moments where he looked like the best player in the world, dominant, unstoppable, the kind of force who can take over both ends of the floor. But then there were the other nights, the inconsistency, the games where he'd disappear, where you'd walk away wondering if the Lakers could really rely on him to be the guy. And that's where Stephen A. and Shannon Sharpe went back and forth. Shannon defended AD, saying injuries have played a role and that people underestimate just how good he's been when healthy. But Stephen A. wasn't having it. He said flat out that LeBron has had to put the cape back on way too many times, and that wasn't supposed to be the plan. And here's where the discussion got really interesting, because what we're seeing now with Luka Doncic changes the whole conversation. Jalen Rose jumped in and said, "Look, Luka might just be the best thing that's ever happened to LeBron at this stage of his career." And he's right. Luka is younger, hungrier, in better condition, and he's ready to dominate. He's going to handle the ball. He's going to be the primary playmaker. And because of that, LeBron doesn't have to do everything anymore. He can finally, for the first time in his career, truly settle into being the second option. Think about how huge that is. For years, LeBron has been the guy, carrying franchises, carrying rosters, shouldering all the pressure. And now, with Luka beside him, he doesn't have to do that. He can get you 22-23 points a night almost effortlessly, just by being out there, but he doesn't have to dominate the ball. He doesn't have to orchestrate every single possession. Luka's got that covered, and that means LeBron is probably about to have one of the most efficient seasons of his entire career. On First Take, they even threw around numbers. Don't expect LeBron to go out there and average 40. No, that's not the point. But could he put up something like 23, 8, and 8, while shooting near 60% from the floor, and maybe even hitting 40% from deep because of all the clean looks he'll get playing next to Luka? Absolutely. And that's the beauty of it. He won't have to force anything. Everything will come naturally within the flow of the game. And that's why the panel was almost unanimous on one thing. Why on earth would LeBron want to leave this situation? Why would he walk away from finally having the perfect running mate? Luka is coming for the league. He's coming for MVP. He's coming for the final. And LeBron knows it. This isn't the time to walk away. If anything, this is the time to stay locked in, to ride this wave, and to see how far it can take him. So when people say LeBron is done after this season, that he's ready to retire, that the Lakers are ready to move on, you've got to pause and think about what we actually see in front of us. Because the reality is, the man is in position to play smarter, not harder, and still contend for a title. And if that's the case, the idea that he's walking away this summer just doesn't make sense. And when you really break it down, this is where the whole First Take debate got heated. The panel basically said, look, LeBron's future is not something you can predetermine right now. It all comes down to what happens this season. If LeBron is healthy, if he's efficient, if he's out there having the easiest time of his career playing next to Luka, then no, he's not retiring and he's not leaving the Lakers. He's going to ride this out. Because why walk away from a setup that finally allows him to play second fiddle, to take the pressure off his shoulders? That was the argument being made on the show, but the flip side was also raised. And this is where it got really interesting. What if it doesn't work? What if the fit is clunky? The Lakers stumble into another play-in, or they flame out in the first round. What if LeBron suffers a setback, a major injury? Something that makes him question whether it's worth rehabbing and grinding just to get back on the floor? Those scenarios, as the analysts pointed out, could absolutely push him toward retirement. Not because he can't play, but because the battle with Father Time and the grind of recovery just might not be worth it anymore. And remember, LeBron is entering uncharted waters for longevity. He's already doing things at his age no one has ever done. Now, here's the part that really stood out to me from the debate, and I agree 100%. Even if LeBron wanted to leave, he can't just walk away clean. He's not going to sign somewhere for the veteran minimum. Teams that he would actually want to play for aren't sitting on cap space. So, it would take a sign and trade, and if you're going to do that, you're talking about coordination, timing, and the Lakers making sure they get something in return. Which brings me to the real question, why would he even want that? If LeBron's goal is to contend, to chase another championship, the Lakers are still the best spot for him if Luka pans out the way most of us expect. Rob Pelinka has made it very clear. The focus is on contending now. That's the word that kept coming up on First Take. This isn't about 2026 or 2027. It's not about 2 or 3 years from now. This is an evaluation season. They want to know which young guys make sense moving forward. Austin Reeves, DeAndre Ayton, Jake LaRavia, the whole supporting cast. They want to see how the LeBron-Luka pairing actually looks on the floor across 82 games and into the playoffs. And if they're dominant, if they prove to be the best duo in the NBA, then it's insanity to even think about breaking that up. And Stephen A. put it perfectly. Even if you hate LeBron, even if you're one of those people who thinks he's overrated, how can you deny that as a second option? He's maybe the greatest we've ever seen. That's the truth. The conversation becomes not whether LeBron is still the best player in the league, but how dangerous he can be as a number 2 option next to a generational superstar like Luka Doncic. That's where the fit matters most. If this was 30-year-old LeBron, no, it wouldn't work. He would have wanted the ball in his hands constantly. He would have wanted to be the engine of everything. But at 39, almost 40, he doesn't want that anymore. He doesn't want to carry every possession. He's looking for ways to preserve his body, to extend his career, to stay productive without burning out. That's why this marriage with Luka makes perfect sense. It's why, on the show, they kept calling it a match made in heaven. And you know what? They're right. Because if you're LeBron, you're looking at this young, hungry MVP candidate who can do the heavy lifting, and you're saying, all I have to do is adjust my game, play off the ball, cut, space the floor, and trust Luka to create? That's it? That's my role now? That's the dream. That's the recipe for not just winning, but extending his career another 2 or 3 years at a high level. But here's where the conversation really turned on First Take. What happens next summer? What if LeBron does walk away? What if he decides this was his last run in LA? Well, then what? Because if you're betting on Austin Reeves suddenly turning into your superstar, forget it. Reeves is good, but he's not that guy. Not at LeBron's level, not even close. DeAndre Ayton? Maybe if he hits his ceiling, he could be really good. But is he going to give you what LeBron James, even at this age, still gives you night in and night out? Absolutely not. And that's why, honestly, the more this conversation went on, the more it became clear to me, this whole narrative of LeBron leaving just doesn't hold water right now. Too many variables, too many things would have to go wrong, too many dominoes would have to fall. And unless the Lakers are getting Giannis or Jokic, which was also thrown out there in the debate, you're not upgrading. You're not finding a better fit than what you already have in LeBron James. And here's where the debate really came to a head. On First Take, the panel started throwing out hypotheticals. What if DeAndre Ayton looks like the player he was supposed to be? What if Austin Reeves continues to grow? And that duo with Luka shows real chemistry. You could argue, in that scenario, maybe the Lakers don't need LeBron to be LeBron anymore. Maybe Ayton gives you 18 and 10 a night, maybe Reeves becomes a steady 16, 18-point scorer, and suddenly you've got that depth, those complementary wing defenders, and Luka carrying the load as your transcendent superstar. And that's not a crazy thought. The Nuggets won with Jokic as their centerpiece, surrounded by guys like Jamal Murray, Aaron Gordon, Michael Porter Jr. None of those players are traditional number twos. Same thing with Milwaukee. Giannis didn't win with another super-duper star. He won with Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday, both guys who, realistically, are best suited to be third option. But together, alongside a dominant number one, they got it done. So the question the panel kept circling back to was this: could Luka replicate that formula? Could he carry a group where Ayton and Reeves are both more like third options, but together they create enough balance to win? Now, I get that. I see the logic. But then you come back to the real point. If LeBron is still healthy, if he's still giving you top 10 production, and let's not forget, he was 6th in MVP voting last year, then why on earth would you want him gone? That's what I kept thinking as I watched this segment. The man is still worth the money. He's still elite. He's still a difference maker in ways that Ayton or Reeves, even at their peaks, will never be. And unless you're telling me LeBron's playing 30 games this year, which, by the way, has never happened in his career, then I don't see the Lakers moving on from him. What I can understand, and this came up as well, is the Lakers sitting down with him and saying, "Look, we can't keep handing you $50 million a year at 40 years old. We need to start spreading that money around. We need to keep Ayton. We need to lock in Reeves. We need to make this roster younger and deeper." Dad, and honestly, that's a fair ask. If you go to LeBron and say, "We'll give you 2 years, $60 million, but we need you to help us manage the books," that makes sense. Not because he isn't worth more. He absolutely is, but because it allows the Lakers to build the team the right way around him and Luka. But here's the problem. How do you tell a guy who just proved he's still a top 10 player in the league, who's still selling out arenas, who's still moving the needle more than anybody in basketball, that he needs to take less? That's the tension. That's the drama. And that's what First Take thrives on. Because the truth is, both sides have a point. The Lakers do need to manage cap space carefully, especially with Ayton and Reeves looking at big paydays. But LeBron is still worth every penny, even at this stage of his career. So when I put all this together, here's where I land. LeBron isn't going anywhere. Not yet. Not while the fit with Luka is this good on paper. Not while the Lakers have a legitimate path to a title. Not while he's still proving, year after year, that he can defy Father Time. And frankly, I don't think the Lakers want him gone. Why would they? What's the alternative? Reeves? Ayton? Some mystery free agent in 2027? It doesn't add up. At the end of the day, this whole LeBron is leaving narrative feels like noise, like manufactured drama to fill headlines. Because the reality is this: LeBron and Luka are a match made in heaven. The Lakers finally have the formula they've been searching for since 2018. A true superstar to carry the load, and LeBron in the perfect role to extend his greatness. And as long as that works, as long as they're winning, there's no reason to think about life after LeBron just yet. So, bottom line, the Lakers need LeBron, LeBron needs Luka, and both sides need each other if they want to get back to the mountaintop. That's the truth. And until proven otherwise, I'm not buying into the idea that this partnership ends anytime soon. What we saw on SportsCenter today was a fascinating discussion surrounding Lauri Markkanen and the possibility of him being targeted by the Los Angeles Lakers. The conversation started with the recognition of just how dominant Markkanen has looked playing in Eurobasket. Now, of course, everyone understands that Eurobasket is not the NBA. The competition is different, but when you look at his skill set, his confidence, and the way he's been performing on that stage, it's impossible to ignore the potential fit on a team like the Lakers. The panel emphasized that sliding him alongside Luka Doncic or even next to LeBron James would give Los Angeles a completely different dynamic offensively. The challenge, of course, lies in the cost. As was pointed out during the program, in order for the Lakers to realistically make a move for Markkanen, Austin Reeves would almost certainly have to be included in the deal. Rui Hachimura's name came up as well, with the possibility of him being part of a package to make salaries match. That's where things get tricky, because as one of the analysts stressed, moving both of those players still wouldn't be enough financially. Los Angeles would have to add more contracts, potentially Gabe Vincent or Max Christie. And even then, it may require the involvement of a third team to help balance out the numbers. From a basketball standpoint, though, the fit is what really excited the SportsCenter crew. Markkanen brings a level of shooting versatility that the Lakers haven't consistently had in their front court. He's a legitimate catch-and-shoot threat, a better off-ball scorer than most of their current options. And at his size, he can play anywhere from the 3 to the 5. That flexibility opens the door for the Lakers to create lineups that are both bigger and more versatile. Imagine a starting unit of Luka Doncic, Marcus Smart, Lauri Markkanen, LeBron James, and DeAndre Ayton. Suddenly, you've got shooting, size, and defensive versatility all in one group. That's the type of lineup that can compete at the highest level. The analysts also pointed out that Markkanen could effectively step into Hachimura's current role while giving the team even more upside. With his ability to stretch the floor, you can keep Ayton in his natural role as a traditional big running pick-and-roll actions while still maintaining floor spacing. It's not just about adding another scorer, it's about the way his presence would reshape how the Lakers operate offensively. Still, there's the contract situation. One perspective shared on the show was that Markkanen might project more as a third or even fourth option on a championship team. That's not a slight against him, but it does raise the question of value. Is it worth giving up young assets like Austin Reeves and Rui Hachimura for a player who may not be your top scoring option? The counterpoint made was that sometimes being a third option is exactly what makes a team dangerous, especially when the first two are as dominant as Doncic and LeBron. The example of Giannis Antetokounmpo winning with Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday was brought up, as well as Nikola Jokic capturing a title with Jamal Murray as his running mate. Another angle discussed on SportsCenter was the long-term view. In a post-LeBron era, the Lakers could potentially build around a core of Luka Doncic, DeAndre Ayton, and Lauri Markkanen. With Markkanen's size and shooting, you'd have two 7-footers who can rebound and defend, while still keeping the floor spaced for Doncic to operate. That kind of core could keep Los Angeles competitive for years, even after their current superstar window closes. The bottom line from today's discussion was clear. The idea of Lauri Markkanen in a Lakers uniform is intriguing, but the cost and timing will be crucial. This might not be a trade that happens during the season. In fact, several panelists suggested that the off-season could be a more realistic time frame, particularly if a sign-and-trade with Austin Reeves could be structured to better align with Markkanen's salary. For now, the question remains whether Los Angeles is willing to sacrifice both youth and depth in order to add a player who might fit more seamlessly into their lineup than anyone they currently have. So, SportsCenter left us with this. Lauri Markkanen may not be the superstar headline name like some of the others linked to the Lakers in the past, but when you look at his fit, his versatility, and his potential impact alongside their current stars, you can understand why this conversation is starting to gain traction. On SportsCenter, the conversation didn't stop at just Lauri Markkanen joining the Lakers. The panel dove deeper into the complexities of what a trade package might actually look like, and the discussion quickly became about more than just one player. The key point raised was that if Los Angeles were to go down this road, it wouldn't simply be a one-for-one type of move. Instead, it would be closer to a 4-for-1 scenario, where the Lakers would be giving up multiple rotation pieces in exchange for Markkanen, and potentially even bringing in additional players to balance things out. One of the intriguing ideas that came up was whether the Lakers could use this as an opportunity to bring in other contributors around the edges. DeAnthony Melton's name was specifically mentioned as a logical fit next to Luka Doncic in the backcourt. The thinking here is simple. If the Warriors continue to drag their feet, could Los Angeles step in and make a compelling case to land Melton as part of a larger reshuffling? He's the kind of defensive-minded guard who slots seamlessly into lineups, and his presence could soften the blow of losing someone like Austin Reeves. There was also speculation about other names potentially being folded into the deal. For instance, the idea of adding a veteran like Al Horford to provide leadership and front-court depth was floated. Even younger players like Andre Jackson Jr., should he become available, were brought up as possible secondary pickups. He's a 6.6 wing with length and athleticism, exactly the type of bench piece the Lakers could use if they were sending out multiple rotation players in the Markkanen trade. The broader point from the discussion was that this might not just be about acquiring Lauri Markkanen. It could be about repositioning the roster entirely by moving out Hachimura and Reeves while strategically pulling in new supporting pieces. The panel then broke down one of the trade frameworks being circulated. The Lakers would receive Lauri Markkanen. The Jazz would take back Terry Rozier, Rui Hachimura, Gabe Vincent, rookie Dalton Knecht, and multiple first-round picks, while Miami would act as a third team, landing Austin Reeves in the process. According to the report, Utah would walk away with Knecht and 3 first-rounders, while also absorbing contracts like Rozier and Hachimura. But, as was pointed out live on air, there are plenty of questions with this construction. Does Utah even have interest in Austin Reeves, given their crowded backcourt with several young guards already in place? Would they view Rozier as a piece worth keeping, or simply as a contract to eventually flip? The consensus was that Utah's real prize in such a scenario would be Knecht and the draft capital. Those future firsts, particularly from the Lakers and Miami, could be far more valuable than veterans like Rui or Rozier, who might just serve as salary fillers in the meantime. The Sports Center crew also challenged whether Miami truly needed to be involved at all. Their angle was that the Lakers and Jazz could likely structure something directly, with Los Angeles sending out Hachimura, Vincent, Knecht, and draft picks, while Utah returns Markkanen. By cutting out the heat, the Lakers might even position themselves to reroute Austin Reeves elsewhere, perhaps to a team that values him more and could send back an additional asset. That way, the Lakers wouldn't just be giving him up as part of a salary maneuver, but instead converting him into another useful player or draft pick. And that's where the discussion really focused. This type of move, if the Lakers pursued it, would need to be smart and layered. It's not just about getting Markkanen, it's about restructuring the roster in a way that makes sense long-term. If Los Angeles is going to give up someone as valuable as Reeves, they can't afford to simply toss him into a deal without maximizing his return. Instead, they need to identify what Utah actually wants, whether it's a wing, a young piece, or cap flexibility, and then find a third team that can provide that in exchange for Reeves. At the end of the segment, the message was clear. While a straight-up Lakers-Jazz deal could happen, the smarter path for Los Angeles might involve finding that extra step, that extra partner, to squeeze the most value out of their outgoing assets. Otherwise, they risk overpaying for Markkanen in a way that could hurt their depth and flexibility down the line. On SportsCenter, the final stretch of the debate brought everything full circle. The analysts pointed out that at its core, the deal really comes down to a simple question. Can the Lakers extract maximum value without overcomplicating the trade? The proposed structure has the Lakers receiving Lauri Markkanen, but the cost is steep. Rui Hachimura, Austin Reeves, Gabe Vincent, Dalton Knecht, and 2 first-round picks, one in 2026 and another in 2031. But the wrinkle here is the 2027 pick. Because Utah already controls it, the Lakers would have to find a way to turn it into a swap to make the math work. That's where the Jazz's position as the key facilitator becomes so important. With Utah in control of that 2027 pick, they can reconfigure it in ways no other team can, essentially turning one pick into 2 and giving the Lakers some flexibility they wouldn't otherwise have. The analysts stressed that this is exactly why Utah holds all the leverage. They can manipulate the draft capital to suit their needs while dangling Markkanen as the centerpiece. From the Lakers' perspective, though, this can't just be about landing one star and hoping it all works out. If Los Angeles is going to surrender this much, there has to be a broader vision. That's why names like DeAnthony Melton, Malik Beasley, or even Al Horford were mentioned again as possible complementary additions. The idea is simple. If the Lakers are going to push their chips to the center of the table, they can't afford to come away with only Markkanen. They need a package that reshapes their roster depth and gives them more than just one elite shooter. Another layer to the conversation involved Austin Reeves' future. As was emphasized on the program, Reeves is on an expiring contract, and his willingness, or lack thereof, to commit to a team like Utah could dictate whether he's even part of the equation. If Reeves has no interest in signing long-term with the Jazz, then Utah would be hesitant to take him on, which opens the door for a third team like Miami to get involved. Miami has been searching for backcourt stability and could see Reeves as a perfect insurance policy if their relationship with Tyler Herro continues to stall. That would also give Reeves a destination he might be happier with rather than landing in a rebuilding situation in Utah. The broader takeaway from SportsCenter was that this isn't just about fit on the floor. It's about fit for every side involved. For Utah, the deal would mark a turning point, moving on from Markkanen in exchange for Knecht, multiple picks, and potential flexibility to reshape the roster. For Miami, the involvement could hinge on whether Reeves is interested in joining them and whether they see him as part of their long-term core. And for the Lakers, the front office has to ask the hard question: is it worth giving up so much depth and future capital? And, if so, can they secure the extra commitments from other role players to justify it? The panel concluded with a cautious but optimistic outlook. On paper, the Lakers could end up with a front line featuring Doncic, Markkanen, LeBron, and Ayton, an imposing blend of size, shooting, and versatility. But the execution matters. Without the right complementary pieces, Los Angeles risks thinning out its roster too much in pursuit of one big name. And so, the discussion ended where it began. Yes, Markkanen is a fascinating target, but the Lakers have to be disciplined, creative, and deliberate if they want to make this gamble pay off. The Los Angeles Lakers are on the verge of pulling off what some are already calling the greatest heist in modern NBA history. And no, that's not just me saying it. This was the talk of the table on First Take this morning, where the entire discussion revolved around the newest developments involving Kawhi Leonard. I've got to tell you, the way this story is unfolding, it feels less like free agency news and more like an NBA scandal with massive consequence. Now, let's set the stage here. The report that dropped this week revealed that back in 2019, during Kawhi's free agency tour, there were requests made behind the scenes that went far beyond what the league allowed. We're not just talking about standard perks or negotiations. According to Sam Amick of The Athletic, Kawhi and his camp asked for everything from private planes to a house to guaranteed endorsement money, even a partial ownership stake in a franchise. Think about that for a second. Ownership. Endorsements guaranteed. We're talking about demands that cut right through the heart of the NBA's collective bargaining agreement. Here's the key part. The Raptors tried to make some of those things happen. The Lakers flat out refused. They weren't going to cross that line. But Steve Ballmer and the Clippers? That's where the accusations come in. Reports say Ballmer and the Clippers were willing to play ball on some of those requests, opening the door for Kawhi to land with them instead of the Lakers or staying in Toronto. That's why this has turned into something much bigger than just free agency rumors. It's now being investigated as a potential rules violation, something that could shake the league to its core. And this is where things get absolutely wild. Because what's on the table, and this is straight from the league office, is the possibility of voiding Kawhi Leonard's contract with the Clippers. Let that sink in. If the NBA finds proof that he was incentivized illegally to sign team-friendly deals that gave the Clippers more flexibility, not only are executive suspensions in play, but Kawhi's contract itself could be wiped off the books. That's the kind of punishment that Adam Silver has made clear he's not afraid to hand down if it protects the integrity of the league. Now imagine what that means for the Lakers. If Kawhi suddenly becomes a free agent, even at this stage of his career, even with the injuries, the Lakers would instantly be one of the first teams in line to make a push. Think about the storyline. Back in 2019, the Lakers thought they had him. People were convinced he'd join LeBron and Anthony Davis. And then, out of nowhere, he went across the hall to the Clippers, a move that shocked the league. But now we're staring at a possible full-circle moment. Kawhi's deal with the Clippers could implode, and the Lakers could have another chance to land him without giving up a single asset. That's why, on First Take, Stephen A. Smith called it straight up. If this contract gets voided, the Lakers are about to rob the NBA, because that's exactly what it would feel like. A player of Kawhi's caliber, two-time Finals MVP, one of the best two-way forces in the game when healthy, suddenly available because the Clippers got caught bending the rules? That's not just a transaction. That's a seismic shift in the balance of power. And listen, nobody's saying this is guaranteed to happen. The investigation is ongoing. There are layers here. There are questions about how deep this goes, what the league can actually prove, and what punishment would realistically look like. But the fact that voiding a superstar's contract is even on the table tells you how serious this situation is. And for Lakers fans, it means one thing. The door to Kawhi Leonard, a door that once felt permanently closed, may not just be reopening, it may be blown wide open. When this story came up on First Take today, the panel couldn't stop dissecting the ripple effects of those negotiations back in 2019. And let's be clear about something. This isn't revisionist history. This is the reality of what Kawhi Leonard and his camp were trying to pull off. He wasn't just fielding offers, he was setting demand. He wanted ownership stakes, private planes, houses, guaranteed endorsement packages, things that would essentially give him not just superstar treatment, but power at a level the CBA was specifically designed to prevent. And here's where Jeanie Buss and the Lakers come into this. The Lakers were in those meetings, they heard the same pitches, and they said no. Jeanie Buss flat out refused to cross that line. She was not going to risk the integrity of the franchise or the league to secure Kawhi Leonard. In hindsight, that was the right move, because as tempting as it must have been, imagine Kawhi alongside LeBron James and Anthony Davis. It would have come at the cost of violating the very rules the league is built on. And Jeanie didn't budge. Contrast that with Steve Ballmer and the Clippers. According to reports, they were far more willing to play ball, and that's what has brought us here. Because if those incentives, those illegal perks, were a factor in Kawhi's decision to sign with the Clippers, then suddenly, we're not just talking about free agency, we're talking about violations that could void his entire contract. And that's exactly why the league is investigating. Now, Stephen A. put it perfectly on the show. This isn't about whether Kawhi Leonard is still great. This is about whether the Clippers bent the rules to steal him from the Lakers and Raptors. And if the NBA proves that, the punishment has to be severe. And he's right, because if this contract gets voided, the floodgates open. Kawhi would become available, and guess who's standing right there, ready to swoop in? The Los Angeles Lakers. Think about the alternate reality here. If the Lakers had agreed to those illegal demands back then, Kawhi might already be wearing purple and gold. He may have joined LeBron and AD in 2019 instead of Paul George and the Clippers. But Jeanie Buss chose the long-term health of the franchise over a quick win. And now, that decision might pay off in the wildest way imaginable. Because if the Clippers are stripped of Kawhi, the Lakers could get another chance, this time without breaking a single rule. Of course, the health question came up on First Take too. Kawhi's availability has been a real issue. He played just 37 games last season, and his injuries have defined the second half of his career. Max Kellerman made the point that even if Kawhi becomes available, the Lakers would have to weigh the risk of signing a player who simply hasn't been able to stay on the floor. And that's a fair argument. But at the same time, as Kendrick Perkins reminded everyone, when Kawhi is healthy, he's still one of the most dominant two-way players in the game. Finals MVP, lockdown defender, offensive assassin. Those guys don't just fall into your lap. So this becomes the ultimate what-if scenario. What if the NBA really voids this contract? What if the Lakers suddenly get their second shot at the guy they thought they had 6 years ago? And what if this time, the stars align? That's why people are calling it the biggest robbery in NBA history. Because for the Lakers to say no to Kawhi in 2019, only to potentially get him now because their rival cheated, that's poetic. That's full circle. That's Hollywood. And just when you think the show couldn't get any more heated, they pivoted. They talked about the other ripple effects in the league. What would Toronto think, knowing Kawhi wanted $15 million in extra endorsement money just to consider staying? What would the rest of the NBA say if the Lakers end up benefiting from the Clippers' downfall? Because make no mistake, if this happens, it won't just be a Lakers story. It'll be an NBA earthquake. Then, As the discussion started winding down, there was a quick check-in on Luka Doncic. News broke about a minor injury scare during Eurobasket, and for a moment, fans held their breath. Luka left the game briefly, but he returned, dropped 40-plus points, and afterwards said he was fine, just a little sore, just needs treatment. That's a relief, because the last thing the league needs right now is a Luka injury on top of this Kawhi chaos. Luka's already gearing up for what could be an MVP-level season, and the entire table agreed. As long as he stays healthy, he's going to keep putting up absurd stat lines. But let's not lose sight of the headline: Kawhi Leonard, the Clippers, and the possibility of avoided contract. The fact that we are even having this conversation shows just how explosive this situation is. And the fact that the Lakers are sitting in the perfect position to take advantage of it? That's why Stephen A. called it what he did. The Lakers aren't just preparing to compete this season, they might be preparing to steal the NBA. What's going on, everybody? Earlier today on SportsCenter, there was a trade proposal that sparked a pretty intense discussion, and I want to walk you through everything that was said and why it matters. The idea itself didn't come out of nowhere. It has actually been floating around for a while, but now it's picked up traction thanks to the Dallas Hoops Journal, which pushed it into the spotlight, and that's what got the attention of the analysts on the show. The deal being talked about is pretty straightforward. Derek Lively and Caleb Martin would head to the Los Angeles Lakers in exchange for Austin Reeves and a future first-round pick. Now, the way it was discussed on SportsCenter was really interesting, because the proposal is being driven from the Dallas side of things. That's key here. This isn't a Lakers blog throwing out wild ideas. This is Dallas media suggesting that the Mavericks should be the ones targeting Austin Reeves, and they've built a case for why it makes sense. On the program, they highlighted how Reeves could step into a big role right now for the Mavericks, while also being a long-term piece who could grow alongside Luka Doncic. The panel pointed out that Dallas is in a position where they're still trying to find that perfect balance around Luka. D'Angelo Russell was brought in, but on SportsCenter it was emphasized that Russell isn't seen as a permanent solution. He's more of a gap filler, a player who can handle minutes and provide offense, but may not be part of the Mavericks' core in the future. Austin Reeves, on the other hand, offers versatility. He can handle the ball, he can play off the ball, he can shoot, and he's shown that he isn't afraid of big moments. For a Dallas team that has dealt with uncertainty around Kyrie Irving, having Reeves would give them stability now and insurance for the future. Of course, the big question is how he fits once Kyrie is fully back. On SportsCenter, they broke this down by suggesting that the Mavericks could experiment with different lineup, staggering minutes, and letting Reeves take some of the ball-handling burden to keep Kyrie and Luka fresh. It wouldn't be perfect right away, but the idea is that it gives Dallas more flexibility than they currently have. But let's not forget the Lakers' perspective. On the show, it was made clear that Los Angeles shouldn't rush into this kind of deal. The Lakers value Reeves highly, and giving him up, along with a first-round pick, would be a huge price. The analysts argued that before even considering such a move, the Lakers would want to see how their roster looks once the season settles, particularly with DeAndre Ayton in the mix. That's another big part of the discussion. The chemistry between Ayton and Luka Doncic could change everything for Dallas. If those two click and become a dominant pairing, then suddenly Dallas doesn't need Derek Lively as much as they thought. Lively is younger, yes, and he has upside, particularly on defense as a rim protector. But Ayton, right now, is the more polished player. He's the one who can step in immediately, provide offense, score in multiple ways, and give you production without needing plays drawn up for him. On SportsCenter, they stressed that this is what makes Ayton so valuable for a team that wants to contend right now. Where it gets tricky is on the defensive side. Ayton himself has admitted that he wants to buy in more, that he wants to prove he can anchor a defense, but up until now, that hasn't always been consistent. Lively, even though he's raw, already has that defensive edge. He's younger, more athletic in certain aspects, and offers rim protection that Ayton sometimes lacked. The analysts debated whether Dallas would be better off keeping that defensive potential in-house rather than moving him in a trade like this. So the takeaway from SportsCenter was this: The trade idea is fascinating, and it's gaining traction for a reason. Dallas sees value in Reeves. Lakers fans, on the other hand, would need to be convinced that giving up both Reeves and a first-round pick is worth it. And for Los Angeles, timing is everything. They don't need to jump into this right now. They need to evaluate their roster, see how Ayton fits, and then maybe revisit deals down the road if things don't play out the way they expect. At the end of the day, this isn't just a fan-driven rumor anymore. It's something being taken seriously by Dallas reporters, debated by national media, and analyzed on one of the biggest sports platforms in the world. Whether or not it ever happens, the fact that it's being discussed at this level shows that both Austin Reeves and Dereck Lively have real value in today's NBA market. And that's what makes this conversation so important. Not because it's guaranteed to go through, but because it highlights how teams like the Lakers and Mavericks are constantly looking for ways to maximize their rosters around their star. So continuing with what was discussed earlier on SportsCenter, the focus shifted heavily to the defensive side of the ball and how the comparison between DeAndre Ayton and Dereck Lively plays into this trade conversation. The analysts made it clear that while Lively has shown flashes of being an elite rim protector and could develop into one of the top defensive centers in the league, Ayton still brings qualities that shouldn't be overlooked. They highlighted that Ayton, during his years in Phoenix, proved that when he commits to playing defense, he's more than capable of holding his own. Now, he might never reach the same ceiling that Lively has defensively, because Lively truly has the potential to be a top 5 shot blocker in the NBA, someone who could realistically find himself on an all-defensive team down the road. But Ayton has already shown that he can anchor a defense when engaged, while still producing on the offensive end in ways Lively simply cannot at this stage of his career. The discussion emphasized an important trade-off. If Ayton gives you reliable production, say 18 points and 10 rebounds per night, and potentially even more when playing alongside Luka Doncic, that's extremely valuable. With Luka drawing so much defensive attention, Ayton could very well raise his scoring into the low 20s, which would make him one of the more impactful offensive centers in the Western Conference. And the analysts on the show made the point that in today's NBA, sometimes it's better to have a very good offensive center who's at least solid defensively, rather than a center who is elite defensively but offers very little on the offensive end. Lively's ceiling is intriguing, no doubt. His defensive instincts, his timing as a shot blocker, his ability to move in pick-and-roll coverage, all of that makes him a valuable piece for the Mavericks. There were even mentions of Mark Cuban's past comments about Lively's potential to eventually stretch the floor and add a three-point shot to his game. If that happens, his value skyrockets. But, as the SportsCenter panel pointed out, that's still all projection, not reality. Right now, Lively is mostly limited to rim running, lob catching, and defensive playmaking, which doesn't guarantee the kind of impact Ayton can already bring on both ends. Because of that, the analysts stressed the importance of patience. Dallas needs to let things play out before deciding whether this trade is really worth pursuing. They need to see how Lively looks in an expanded role. They need to evaluate Ayton's production and buy in on defense. And they need to test the on-court chemistry between Luka Doncic and a player like Austin Reeves if they were ever to acquire him. When the conversation turned specifically to Reeves, SportsCenter really broke down the divide in how people view him. There are fans who believe he's a future superstar, practically waiting for LeBron James to retire so that Reeves can take over as the face of the Lakers. And then there are those on the opposite end of the spectrum who dismiss him as overrated, claiming he's not even worth a serious roster spot. The truth, as the panel explained, is somewhere in the middle. Austin Reeves is not a generational superstar, but he is far from being an average role player. He's a high-level guard, someone who can flirt with all-star status in the right situation, and his skill set makes him a very good player for any team looking to build depth and versatility in the backcourt. The concern raised, however, is about his long-term fit alongside Luka Doncic. Reeves is at his best when the ball is in his hand. That's when he creates. That's when he's most comfortable. Playing off the ball, particularly as a spot-up shooter, hasn't been his strongest attribute so far. Now, he can improve in that area. It's not a skill set that's completely out of his reach, but as of right now, his game overlaps a little too much with Luka's. That's the challenge. How do you maximize both players' strengths without minimizing one of them? That's the type of detail Dallas would need to figure out if they were ever serious about pursuing this deal. So the program's takeaway was balance. Ayton brings proven offense with solid defensive potential. Lively is raw, but has elite defensive upside. And Reeves is a very good guard whose value depends largely on fit. That's why the analysts kept circling back to the same point. It's too early for either side to rush into this. Both Dallas and Los Angeles need more time to see what they already have before deciding whether a trade like this makes sense for the future. On SportsCenter, the conversation moved into another important angle, and that's Austin Reeves' own willingness to adapt his game. The point was made that Reeves himself has been vocal about needing to adjust in order to play effectively alongside Luka Doncic. He knows that with Luka controlling so much of the offense, he can't simply operate the way he does when the ball is always in his hands. Reeves has admitted he needs to become a better shooter off the ball, that he needs to move more effectively without it, and that he has to buy in defensively at a higher level. The analysts explained that this kind of self-awareness is critical. You don't want to strip away what makes Austin Reeves such a valuable player: his ability to create, to control pace, to make plays out of the pick and roll, but you also need that balance. When Luka is being Luka, orchestrating everything on offense, Reeves has to complement that rather than overlap with it. But when Luka is on the bench or sitting out for a night, that's when Reeves can shine fully. We've seen him in those situations already, especially when LeBron James sits out in Los Angeles. Suddenly, Reeves steps into the role of lead creator, and the numbers show he can deliver. 28 points, 6 rebounds, 8 assists type of nights are within his reach. That's exactly the kind of production Dallas would love to tap into when Luka isn't on the floor. But here's where the hesitation came in. On SportsCenter, they emphasized that unless the trade for Reeves is a clear no-brainer, one of those deals you absolutely cannot pass up, it might be smarter to hold off. The idea of moving Austin Reeves plus a first-round pick just to bring in Derek Lively and Caleb Martin raised some eyebrows on the show. Some analysts acknowledged that fans might call that a steal, but the panel questioned whether it truly makes sense given the current context. The key issue is this: if DeAndre Ayton develops into the long-term solution at center, then why would the Lakers essentially sell the farm to get Derek Lively? If this were last season, before the Ayton trade, when the Lakers were still searching desperately for a young center to pair with their core, then yes, a move like Reeves and a first-round pick for Lively might have been justified. In fact, on the show, they pointed out that if the Mark Williams opportunity had fallen apart at last year's trade deadline, then targeting Lively in a package like this would have been a priority. But the circumstances have changed. With Ayton now in the picture, the Lakers have someone who, if things click, could be the centerpiece of their front court for years. That makes the calculation different. The show also brought up the financial element. Derek Lively would be on a cheap rookie contract for several years, giving the Lakers flexibility as they plan ahead. Meanwhile, if Ayton truly proves himself in Los Angeles, his market value jumps right back up, likely into the $20+ million range annually. And while that's a big number, it's also the kind of number you're only willing to pay if the player has earned it, if he's been highly productive, if he's helped the team win, if he's shown that he's indispensable. In other words, paying Ayton that kind of money would actually be a good problem to have, because it means the Lakers are getting the version of Ayton that can elevate them to another level. That's not a scenario where you regret the contract. That's one where you celebrate that the gamble paid off. So the ultimate takeaway from SportsCenter was that this is a trade you can understand from both perspectives. For the Lakers, it represents a chance at securing a long-term franchise center in Lively, while still holding Ayton in the present. For Dallas, it's about finding that secondary playmaker who can support Luka right now and give the team insurance for a post-Kyrie era. The panel noted that, even in the worst-case scenario, Dallas would still have solid young pieces like Daniel Gafford to anchor the front court, while adding a guard like Reeves to their young core moving forward. The consensus was that this deal is intriguing on paper, but complicated in reality. Both teams have reasons to be interested, but also very valid reasons to hesitate. That's why this isn't a trade that feels imminent, but rather one that will continue to be debated, analyzed, and reevaluated as the season unfolds. Look, the Lakers still have a young enough core to build around long-term, but let's really break this down. Caleb Martin? I like him a lot. He's tough, he's proven, he's the kind of 3-and-D wing every contender wants. But here's the real question. Is that the best way for the Lakers to use their assets? I'm not convinced. This isn't a knock on Derek Lively either. The kid is already showing flashes of being special. What he did during that finals run? Ridiculous. He could absolutely grow into an all-star center. If the Lakers actually pulled this off, you could argue it makes sense. But here's the catch. If DeAndre Ayton is already filling that role for you, why on earth would you flip Austin Reeves plus a first just to get another center? Think about it this way. Would you rather have Luka Doncic and Derek Lively together? Or Luka Doncic with DeAndre Ayton plus whatever you can turn Reeves and that first-round pick into? Personally, I'd take the second option all day. Imagine flipping those assets into someone like Herb Jones, Trey Murphy, guys who bring elite defense and versatility on the wing. That, paired with Luka and Ayton, is a more complete, balanced team. And let's not forget, Reeves is more than just a throw-in. He's proven he can be a 20-point scorer when stars sit. He has playmaking ability, he fits with stars, and he's clutch. Giving that up for a position you might already have covered? Risky move. So, for me, it's about building the right unit. Luka with Ayton anchoring the paint, surrounded by long, switchable two-way wings. Guys like Herb Jones, Trey Murphy, even someone like Jake LaRavia if he develops, or Bronny James if he grows into that defensive stopper role. That's a formula. That's the kind of roster that can win deep in the playoffs. But if you go with Luka and Lively, then what? You're scrambling to fill the gaps everywhere else. That's the gamble. If DeAndre Ayton really is the answer at center, then the Lakers don't need to be chasing another big man. Even if Derek Lively turns out to be the better player years from now, I'd still take Ayton plus more pieces around him. Why? Because that gives you depth, flexibility, and a more balanced roster. That's how you build a true contender. Now look, I wouldn't hate it if the Lakers somehow landed Lively. He's already showing signs of being a future franchise center, and he's so young. But let's be real. Why would Dallas even put him on the table? If anything, they'd move Daniel Gafford first, before they think about giving up Lively. And that's why I just don't see the logic in giving up Austin Reeves, plus a first-round pick for this package. Sure, Caleb Martin could give you short-term 3-and-D help, but is that really the best use of your assets? I don't think so. Those same assets could be flipped for a high-upside wing or a versatile two-way guard. Imagine pairing Luka and Ayton with someone like Jalen Suggs, still young, still developing, but already proven as a defender and secondary playmaker. That's the type of move that solves multiple long-term needs without leaving other holes to fill. Because here's the truth, trading for Lively might actually create more problems than it solves. If Ayton's already working out, why double down at the same position? Instead, use those resources to lock down the wing spot, bring in another two-way piece, and round out the roster. That way, you're carving out fewer gaps to patch later, instead of selling the farm for a player you might not even need. Now, if this opportunity had been there earlier, say, right when the Lakers first made the move for Luka, then absolutely, I'd be all in. Back then, solving the center position for now and the future, while adding a versatile wing like Caleb Martin, would have been perfect. You could have slotted him in for Austin Reeves if necessary, or gone bigger with guys like Jared Vanderbilt or Dorian Finney-Smith. That kind of lineup gives you size, versatility, and a better matchup against teams like Minnesota. But today, with Ayton starting to settle in as that franchise big, I just don't think it makes the same sense anymore. At the end of the day, this is all about perspective. Personally, I don't think the trade makes a lot of sense right now, but that's just my take. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think the Lakers should go all in for Derek Lively? Or should they stay the course with DeAndre Ayton and build around him? Drop your thoughts down in the comments, because this debate isn't going away anytime soon. And hey, if you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to hit that like button. It really helps the channel and lets me know you're enjoying this kind of content. And if you haven't already, subscribe and turn on those notifications so you don't miss any of the latest updates. Appreciate all the support, and I'll catch you in the next one.